Trembling, Lily Parker stood before the judge, clutching her soaked backpack, forced to choose, stay silent or speak up. At first, everyone laughed at the timid girl, convinced she was just another frightened child. But a tiny mistake from the judge sparked something no one expected. In a flash, Lily exposed knowledge far beyond her years, stunning the courtroom into silence. As whispers spread and hidden agendas surfaced, one question remained. Could Lily turn humiliation into triumph before it was too late? Want to know what happened? Watch until the end and don't miss this story, full of emotions and unexpected twists. Also, tell us from which city you're watching, comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories like this. It all began on a rainy Tuesday morning in a small courthouse nestled in the Vermont countryside, the kind of place where oak trees lined the streets and everyone knew each other by name. 12-year-old Lily Parker stood on the courthouse steps, her small hand gripping the strap of a second-hand backpack that seemed almost bigger than she was. The rain had dampened her neatly combed hair, and she took a deep breath before following her mother through the heavy wooden doors. Inside, the courtroom smelled of polished wood and wet coats. The ceiling fans turned lazily above, barely stirring. The solemn air. Lily's heart pounded as she took her seat on a bench worn smooth by decades of anxious visitors. This wasn't a criminal trial, just a custody hearing between her separated parents, but to Lily, it felt like the most important day of her young life. Judge Harold Whitman presided from his bench, peering over reading glasses that slid halfway down his nose. At 73, he had been hearing family cases for longer than Lily had been alive. His reputation for impatience and old-fashioned views was well known throughout the county. "We'll hear from the minor child today," Judge Whitman announced, his voice echoing through the courtroom. The way he said minor child made Lily wince. She already felt small enough. As she approached the witness stand, Lily could feel every eye in the room following her. Her shoes squeaked slightly on the polished floor, a sound that seemed to amplify her discomfort. After being sworn in, she settled into the oversized chair, her feet barely touching the floor. "Speak up, young lady," Judge Whitman commanded when Lily began answering questions about her home life. Her responses were thoughtful, but delivered in a voice barely above a whisper. What no one in that courtroom knew, not the judge, not the attorneys, not even her own parents, was that behind Lily's timid exterior lay an extraordinary mind. For the past 2 years, she had been secretly taking college-level courses online, using the public library's free Wi-Fi after school. Her memory was photographic, her problem-solving skills exceptional, and her emotional intelligence far beyond her years. In the audience sat Ms. Evelyn Hart, the local librarian who had discovered Lily's gift when she found the girl solving advanced calculus problems between the bookshelves. Evelyn watched now with clenched fists as Judge Whitman grew, visibly frustrated with Lily's quiet responses. "Do you understand what we're doing here today?" the judge asked with thinly veiled condescension. "These are simple adult matters that affect your future." The second day of the hearing brought a chill that had nothing to do with Vermont's autumn weather. Judge Whitman, already irritated by what he perceived as Lily's reluctance to engage, called her back to the stand. A shaft of pale sunlight cut through the high windows, illuminating the dust particles that danced in the air around her. "Let's try again, shall we?" he said, adjusting his glasses. "Perhaps today you can give us answers that actually help this court make a decision." Lily's eyes darted to her mother, then to her father seated at separate tables with their attorneys. She swallowed hard and nodded. "Your Honor," she began, her voice still soft but steadier than before, "I've given thought to the living arrangement questions, and I believe a split schedule might—" "Speak up," the judge interrupted, "and use words a child your age would use. This isn't a college dissertation." The irony of his statement hung in the air, unrecognized by everyone except Lily and Ms. Hart, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat. When Lily carefully explained her reasoning for wanting equal time with both parents, citing her need for stability during school days, Judge Whitman sighed dramatically. What do you know about stability? You're 12. Then came the moment that would later be remembered by everyone present. When discussing her father's new apartment, Lily mentioned that its proximity to the library would be beneficial for her. Ongoing research. Research? Judge Whitman scoffed. You mean your school projects on butterflies and planets? Snickers rippled through the courtroom. Lily's cheeks flushed crimson. Actually, she replied, her voice suddenly clearer, I've been studying cognitive neuroscience and its applications to early childhood development. The judge stared at her, then laughed outright. Well, aren't you just full of big words? Next, you'll tell me you're working on nuclear physics in your spare time. More laughter followed. In the gallery, a man Lily didn't recognize leaned forward with interest. This was Thomas Bell, a social worker assigned to observe the proceedings, his sharp eyes missing nothing about Lily's demeanor or the judge's dismissive attitude. Humiliated, Lily retreated into silence. Judge Whitman, mistaking her wounded pride for childish sulking, grew more frustrated. This is precisely why children your age shouldn't be making these decisions, he declared. You clearly don't understand the gravity of these proceedings. As Lily stepped down, her entire body trembling, Ms. Hart caught her eye and gave her a subtle nod of encouragement. Mr. Bell made a note in his leather-bound journal, his expression thoughtful. That evening, alone in her mother's small apartment, Lily sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by notebooks filled with her extraordinary ideas and research. Tears splashed onto pages of elegant mathematical formulas and beautifully articulated theories. For the first time in her young life, Lily began to wonder if hiding her abilities had been a mistake all along. That night brought little sleep to several people connected to the Parker custody case. Lily tossed in her bed, replaying the judges. Mocking laughter. Miss Hart sat in her small cottage, drafting and redrafting an email to a friend who worked as an education specialist, and Thomas Bell remained in his office long after hours, searching through public records and school databases. Morning arrived with a soft golden glow that belied the tension waiting at the courthouse. Lily walked through the doorway with shoulders slightly more squared than the day before, a subtle change, yet noticeable to the two adults who had taken particular interest in her case. Ms. Hart approached Lily before proceedings began, kneeling beside her in the hallway. Remember, brilliance often looks like oddity to those who don't understand it, she whispered, pressing a small book of Emily Dickinson poems into Lily's hands. She was misunderstood too. Across the corridor, Thomas Bell observed this interaction while pretending to review his notes. After 20 years in social services, he had developed an uncanny ability to recognize exceptional children trapped in ordinary circumstances. Something about Lily's responses yesterday, their precision, their structure, had triggered his professional instincts. When court resumed, Judge Whitman appeared particularly irritable, shuffling papers and frowning. At his watch, the lawyers droned through arguments about school districts and holiday schedules. Lily sat quietly, occasionally jotting notes in a small blue notebook. During a discussion about educational preferences, the judge pointed directly at Lily. I suppose the child would prefer whichever parent lets her play more video games, he remarked, earning polite chuckles from several attorneys. Before either parent could respond, Thomas Bell rose from his seat. Your Honor, if I may, he said, his voice carrying the weight of his position. As the court-appointed family advocate, I'd like to submit some additional information regarding Lily's educational needs. The judge waved his hand impatiently. Proceed. Bell approached with a manila folder. These are Lily's standardized test results from last spring. They weren't included in either parent's submissions. A moment of silence fell as Judge Whitman reviewed the papers, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion. There must be some mistake, he muttered. No mistake, Your Honor, Bell replied. Lily scored in the 99.9th percentile across all subjects. Her written essays were evaluated at a college sophomore level. The courtroom's atmosphere changed instantly. Parents exchanged glances. Lawyers leaned forward. Miss Hart watched with quiet satisfaction as understanding dawned on the judge's face. Lily herself kept her eyes fixed on her shoes, feeling a complicated mix of relief and anxiety. Her secret, the one she'd kept even from her battling parents, was beginning to unravel in this most public of forums. Judge Whitman cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he studied the test results more carefully. The courtroom remained unusually quiet, all eyes moving between the judge and the small girl who suddenly seemed like a stranger to everyone present. "These scores," he finally said, "are quite remarkable, if accurate. They've been verified." "Your Honor," Thomas Bell assured him, "and there's more. With the court's permission, I'd like to call Dr. Eleanor Simmons." A silver-haired woman in a tailored navy suit rose from the back row. She moved with the confident grace of someone accustomed to lecture halls and academic conferences. "Dr. Simmons is the head of gifted education for the state," Bell explained. "She reviewed Lily's academic portfolio at my request." Lily's father leaned over to his attorney, whispering urgently. Her mother simply stared, shock evident in her expression. Neither had known about these exceptional test results, much less any academic portfolio. Once sworn in, Dr. Simmons spoke with measured authority. "What we're seeing with Lily Parker is extremely rare, based on her independent research projects and the advanced coursework she's been quietly completing. She demonstrates cognitive abilities that place her in the profoundly gifted category." "And neither parent was aware of this?" Judge Whitman asked, skepticism creeping back into his voice. "Children like Lily often hide their abilities," Dr. Simmons explained. "Sometimes out of modesty, sometimes out of fear of being different. In Lily's case, it appears she found outlets for her intellect without drawing attention to herself." Ms. Hart nodded almost imperceptibly from her seat. She had witnessed Lily's cautious approach to learning, how the girl would check out books on quantum physics but hide them inside novel covers, how she would work through complex problems in the library's quiet corner where no one could see. Judge Whitman turned his attention to Lily. "Gone," was the condescending tone. "Young lady, is what they're saying true? Have you been studying at this advanced level?" Lily took a deep breath. The moment felt like standing at the edge of a high diving. "Bored, terrifying, but somehow necessary. Yes, Your Honor," she said, her voice finding unexpected strength. "I've completed 3 online college courses in mathematics and 2 in cognitive psychology. I'm currently working on a research paper about memory formation in early adolescence." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Her father's face showed pride mingled with confusion. Her mother pressed a hand to her mouth. "And you never told your parents?" the judge asked, gentler now. Lily's eyes glistened with tears she wouldn't let fall. "They were so busy fighting with each other. I didn't want to be another problem they had to solve." The simplicity and heartbreak of this statement silenced everyone. Judge Whitman removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. For perhaps the first time in his long career, he found himself speechless before a 12-year-old witness. "Court will recess for 30 minutes. Judge Whitman announced, his voice carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. The gallery rustled with movement as people stood, but few actually left the room, too invested in this unexpected development. In the hallway, Lily's parents converged on her simultaneously, their faces a matching study in shock and concern. "Why? Didn't you tell us?" her mother asked, kneeling down despite her formal skirt suit. "All this time," her father shook his head in disbelief. "The advanced math books in your room, I thought they were just aspirational, that you liked the way they looked." Lily's response was simple. "You were both so sad already." These 5 words hung in the air between them, carrying the profound wisdom of a child who had tried to protect her parents from additional burdens. Both adults fell silent, confronted with how their marital struggles had appeared through their daughter's eyes. Nearby, Ms. Hart conferred with Thomas Bell and Dr. Simmons, their heads bent together in serious discussion. Occasionally, they glanced toward Lily, their expressions a mix of concern and determination. When court reconvened, Judge Whitman's demeanor had transformed completely. The impatient, dismissive authority figure had been replaced by a man who seemed to be taking extraordinary care with his words. "Before we continue with standard custody matters," he began, "I believe we need to address the unique educational circumstances that have come to light." He looked directly at Lily. "Young lady, Ms. Parker, I owe you an apology. I made assumptions about you that were incorrect and, frankly, unfair." The courtroom fell silent. Judges rarely apologized, especially to children. "I'd like to hear, in your own words, what you believe would be the best arrangement for your education going forward." Lily looked surprised at being asked her opinion so directly, especially after being dismissed previously. She glanced at Ms. Hart, who gave her an encouraging nod. "I need access to resources," Lily said, her voice steadier now that she was discussing ideas rather than emotions. "The library has been my sanctuary, but I'll soon need laboratory facilities and guidance from subject matter experts," she proceeded, to outline a thoughtful plan that balanced conventional schooling with accelerated learning opportunities. Her parents listened with growing amazement as their daughter articulated concepts they hadn't realized she understood. When she finished, Judge Whitman looked at the attorneys. "I'm considering appointing an educational guardian to work alongside both parents in supporting Ms. Parker's academic development. Custody will need to accommodate her access to appropriate resources." Thomas Bell rose. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit that Ms. Hart, who has been informally mentoring Lily for some time, might serve in this capacity." The librarian straightened in her seat, clearly surprised, but not unwilling. Lily's expression brightened visibly at this suggestion. For the first time since the proceedings began, a real sense of possibility filled the courtroom. The feeling that something important was happening, that lives were being redirected toward better paths. News of the extraordinary proceedings spread quickly through the small Vermont town. By afternoon, the courtroom gallery had filled with curious onlookers, teachers from the local school, town council members, and neighbors who had known Lily since she was a toddler, but never suspected the mind that existed behind her quiet demeanor. Judge Whitman, now fully invested in understanding Lily's capabilities, made an unusual request. "I believe it would benefit this court to see a demonstration of Ms. Parker's abilities," he stated. "Not as a performance or spectacle, but to properly inform our decisions about her educational needs." Lily's attorney conferred briefly with her parents, who nodded their agreement. Ms. Hart approached with a supportive hand on Lily's shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything," she whispered. "But if you're willing, perhaps show them your work on that mathematics problem you were exploring last week." Lily nodded slowly. A court officer brought in a whiteboard from the building's conference room and placed it where everyone could see. The girl approached it hesitantly, picking up a marker with slightly trembling fingers. "This is a problem from a mathematics competition for university students," she explained, her voice gaining confidence as she moved into familiar territory. "It involves combinatorial game theory." For the next 15 minutes, the courtroom watched in stunned silence as Lily worked through a complex mathematical proof, explaining each step in language that shifted between technical terminology and accessible metaphors. Her hands moved with increasing assurance across the whiteboard, her earlier nervousness forgotten in the flow of pure intellectual engagement. When she finished, several people in the audience were leaning forward in their seats. A mathematics teacher from the high school was frantically taking notes. Judge Whitman sat back, his expression thoughtful. "And you developed this interest entirely on your own?" he asked. "Not entirely," Lily admitted. "Ms. Hart helped me find resources, and there are online forums where I can discuss problems with other people who enjoy mathematics." Dr. Simmons stepped forward again. "Your Honor, what we're witnessing here is precisely why gifted children like Lily need specialized educational planning. Their minds work differently. Not better necessarily, but differently. They need challenges and mentorship tailored to their unique ways of thinking." Lily's parents exchanged glances. Something unspoken passed between them, perhaps the first moment of true agreement they'd shared in years. Their daughter's needs clearly transcended their personal conflicts. Judge Whitman nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to understand, and I'm Reconsidering many aspects of this case, he looked directly at Lily. "Thank you for sharing your work with us. It's quite remarkable." For the first time since the hearings began, Lily smiled, a genuine, unburdened expression that transformed her face. Several people in the gallery smiled back, including an elderly man who had been the town's most celebrated teacher before his retirement. The atmosphere in the courtroom had completely changed. What had begun as a contentious custody battle was evolving into something more like a community rallying around an extraordinary child. By the final day of the hearing, something remarkable had happened to the entire proceeding. The atmosphere of the courtroom had transformed from adversarial to collaborative. Lily's parents sat at the same table for the first time, reviewing documents together rather than through competing attorneys. Representatives from the state education department arrived with proposals for accommodating Lily's unique needs. The principal of the local high school offered access to their advanced science laboratories. Even the owner of the town's only bookstore came forward with a practical suggestion. "I have a second-floor space above my shop," she told the judge. "It's been empty for years. With some modifications, it could become a study space where Lily and perhaps other gifted students could work on independent projects." Judge Whitman, who had presided over hundreds of family court cases during his long career, found himself in uncharted territory. What had begun as a standard custody dispute had evolved into something like a town meeting, with citizens pooling resources to support one extraordinary child. "In my 30 years on this bench," he admitted, addressing the crowded courtroom, "I've never seen a community come together quite like this." Ms. Hart and Thomas Bell had worked through the night, preparing a comprehensive proposal for Lily's educational guardianship. Their plan integrated contributions from various community members while ensuring that both parents remained centrally involved in their daughter's life. "The goal isn't to separate Lily from normal childhood experiences," Ms. Hart explained. "Rather, it's to provide outlets for her exceptional abilities while allowing her to develop socially with peers." Throughout this discussion, Lily sat quietly, occasionally making notes in her blue notebook. The nervous, intimidated girl from the first day had been replaced by someone still shy but increasingly comfortable with being seen for who she truly was. When asked if she wished to address the court one final time, Lily stood with new confidence. "I never wanted to cause trouble," she began, looking directly at Judge Whitman. "I just needed space to think about the questions that interest me. But now I understand that hiding part of yourself isn't really living honestly." She turned to her parents. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I thought it would make everything more complicated." Her father wiped away a tear. Her mother reached for her hand. "What I want now," Lily continued, "is to keep learning, but not alone anymore. And maybe someday I can help other kids who feel different too." The judge nodded, visibly moved. "Ms. Parker, I believe you already have." As the formal proceedings concluded, Judge Whitman issued a unique ruling that established joint custody with specific provisions for Lily's educational needs. Ms. Hart was appointed as educational guardian, with Thomas Bell serving as family liaison to ensure all aspects of the arrangement functioned smoothly. Outside the courthouse, yellow leaves spiraled down from maple trees as Lily emerged into autumn sunlight, flanked by her parents and surrounded by community members who now saw her clearly for the first time. It all began on a rainy Tuesday morning in a small courthouse nestled in the Vermont countryside, the kind of place where oak trees lined the streets and everyone knew each other by name. 12-year-old Lily Parker stood on the courthouse steps, her small hand gripping the strap of a second-hand backpack that seemed almost bigger than she was. The rain had dampened her neatly combed hair, and she took a deep breath before following her mother through the heavy wooden doors. Inside, the courtroom smelled of polished wood and wet coats. The ceiling fans turned lazily above, barely stirring the solemn air. Lily's heart pounded as she took her seat on a bench worn smooth by decades of anxious visitors. This wasn't a criminal trial, just a custody hearing between her separated parents. But to Lily, it felt like the most important day of her young life. Judge Harold Whitman presided from his bench, peering over reading glasses that slid halfway down his nose. At 73, he'd been hearing family cases for longer than Lily had been alive. His reputation for impatience and old-fashioned views was well known throughout the county. "We'll hear from the minor child today," Judge Whitman announced, his voice echoing through the courtroom. The way he said "minor child" made Lily wince. She already felt small enough. As she approached the witness stand, Lily could feel every eye in the room following her. Her shoes squeaked slightly on the polished floor, a sound that seemed to amplify her discomfort. After being sworn in, she settled into the oversized chair, her feet barely touching the floor. "Speak up, young lady," Judge Whitman commanded when Lily began answering questions about her home life. Her responses were thoughtful, but delivered in a voice barely above a whisper. What no one in that courtroom knew, not the judge, not the attorneys, not even her own parents, was that behind Lily's timid exterior lay an extraordinary mind. For the past 2 years, she had been secretly taking college-level courses online, using the public library's free Wi-Fi after school. Her memory was photographic, her problem-solving skills exceptional, and her emotional intelligence far beyond her years. In the audience sat Ms. Evelyn Hart, the local librarian who had discovered Lily's gift when she found the girl solving advanced calculus problems between the bookshelves. Evelyn watched now with clenched fists as Judge Whitman grew visibly frustrated with Lily's quiet responses. "Do you understand what we're doing here today?" the judge asked with thinly veiled condescension. "These are simple adult matters that affect your future."